all the stuff that we do, all the stuff that we read, the things that we read do not have to make us happy. And a lot of the stuff I read is nonfiction. My background is journalism again. And so the stuff that I'm reading, it's can be even more heart wrenching because it's real. Like it's real. Like it really happened. You know, it's not like this fictional account. Nothing wrong with fictional accounts. Shout out to Truman Capote, who would also be on my list, but I'm focusing more on straight up nonfiction as opposed to creative nonfiction. But there's a place for that. But when something's nonfiction, like every single word and everything is about as accurate as it can get from a journalistic perspective, it hits different. One of the books that did it for me, and I have a physical copy around here, is The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. He passed away a handful of years ago. I think he was already an older gentleman when this book came out. I discovered this book, I think, shortly after grad school. So it was a lot of books that I discovered right fresh out of grad school, again, a very malleable time because I was still relatively young and trying to, again, find my voice and find my energy. The People's History of the United States works really, really well for one simple reason. That title explains what it means. And there's this great proverb, which I'm going to paraphrase. And I believe it's an African proverb that Howard, I believe he opens the book with it. He says, until the lion knows how to write, history will always be told from the perspective of the hunter. In other words, whomever survives from that, and more importantly, forget survive it, whoever has the microphone, the power, whoever has the TV show, whoever has the ability to publish their work, whoever stands up and actually can have a platform to connect with other people, they are the people that are going to be sharing and making that documented history. The problem with that, of course, is that for many ages, up until today, to this day, that must be the meme of the day, to this day, the people that have access to the TV shows, to the books. Now, I don't mean reading them. I don't mean the library. That's a whole different discussion. Shout out to my libraries. But more like the people who are creating this history, it's still like extreme bias. I'm part of that. I'm part of the media. I got my master's in magazine publishing from Northwestern. So I do not come from a rich family, but somehow I was able to get in there. And now I'm trying to give that game to y'all. But even I am an extreme exception to this day as far as African-American men who graduated with a master's in magazine publishing from, at that time, the #1 journalism school in the country. I am a rarity. I'm like, yeah, there's so many analogies that I come up with. I'm sure you can use your imagination, but I'll keep it light. What I love about Howard's work, not only this book, but other books that he's done, and the book is very thick. Again, I have my copy around here, but that shows I'm actually reading these books. These are not for play. I'm reading it somewhere around here. What I love is that he's given a perspective on all these different parts of American history, up until recent times, up until I want to say the 80s, based on the view of the culture that was not expressed and or what that was repressed. That is powerful. I believe the book opens up with the years right before Christopher Columbus came. And for you history buffs and or fellow bookworms, you know there was a book that came out, I want to say about 10 years ago, called 1491. I heard it was an excellent book. I have not read it, but I heard it's excellent. It's basically taking that concept. Howard did that like 20, 30 years before that. No shade at the person who wrote 1491. It was way more in depth. Howard did that like in a chapter. And after reading, I want to say it's the first, maybe second chapter. After that, reading that chapter, I was so angry. Mostly because, not just because of the challenges with the Native Americans here. I spent some time in Vancouver. I've heard a lot of the stories of y'all up there. We got all kinds of stuff coming up now, quite literally, unfortunately, with the Native American schools that are created in South Canada and all this, like all kinds of literally things get buried and brought up to the ground, all kinds of stuff coming up Hopefully there's reparations as well as forgiveness that happens along the way. When you read those kinds of things, at least for me, it's not just, excuse me, it's not just, okay, these things happen. That's messed up. I'm from New Jersey, which was originally Native American land. I forget the original name of it, but you know what I mean? Like all these different types of things. For me, at least, it's a step beyond that. It's also a step of how many, because I'm a storyteller, so how many of these stories were never told? How many of these were never shared? How many stories, not only were they not given the voice or the space to do so, because things weren't fair, and I'm being kind about that, but also how many actually had stories to tell, told those stories, and they were actively repressed because they told those stories? How many were silenced? Those are two separate things. It's one thing to not have the platform, to not speak up. That's like, to not speak up, that's a personal choice. If you don't speak up for yourself or your people, okay, that's choice. No shade, just that's a choice. You see me on air every day this month, so that is absolutely a choice. You're making a choice now. When you're actively repressed, though, that's a whole different story. That means you might have had the opportunity, or maybe you even did speak up, and you got shut down by the powers that be. This book like lit a fire in me, and I'm like, oh, wow, like everything. And of course, that reverberates. We're going back to Christopher Columbus, so that reverberates. What's that? 5-6 centuries at this point. Time's flying, right? So whatever successes, quote unquote, came from that dominant force at that period of time. If you know your compound interest, then you know that accrues over time. The reverse is also true for those Native American cultures, for the African American cultures, for those Chinese American cultures. Don't even get me started on San Francisco. Like all those different vibes, that means the opposite is also true. That means that that repression and those assets, those things that were stolen from us, those ways that we could have thrived, but we were stopped from doing so, not by choice, but by force. That means the compound interest of that, whatever that anger is, whatever that frustration, whatever those deficits are, deficits can also compound. So you have compound interest in your checking account, your savings account, or you can have compound interest in your credit card debt. They both do the same thing. This book gets into that. I could do a whole episode about the book. It's a fantastic book. Rest in peace to Howard Zinn. Your voice is still here. I couldn't just do one book. I couldn't. I tried. I got 40 books in there. I'm not good at editing when it comes to that. I'm a great editor, but not when it comes to that stuff. Fellow book, and a band playing on. Right, another powerhouse, another Brown book. I'm saying there was a formative time, particularly when I was reading this book. This book is about the history of the HIV/AIDS crisis. I'm old, but I'm not quite that old. So a lot of stuff that happened in this book, I was like my kid's age or a little bit older or whatever. So a lot of this stuff I didn't know. Or if I knew it, I saw it through a kid's eyes. And if you're a kid in the 80s, you knew what AIDS was, or at least you're familiar with it, because you think of Rock Hudson, or you think of Ryan White, rest in peace, the little kid who got it through, who got HIV through a blood transfusion, and he was really close to Michael Jackson, and Michael was at the height of his stardom, so it made a big deal. Similar to Princess Di, also at the height of her stardom, rest in peace, and her supporting a lot of people who were at that time really, really, truly dying of AIDS. It's not like today where there's ways to extend life. It was like you got that, and then you could be gone in weeks, months, no exaggeration. So it was a scary time, even as a little kid. This gets to the history of it, the repression of it. Again, for so many people that I know and love in the LGBTQ community, and their uncles, their mentors, people that they loved and respected, they are gone. Got me teary-eyed over here, but they are gone. You can be mad and upset about HIV and AIDS and the millions of lives, tens of millions probably at this point, that it's touched and or that people have been passed away. But then similar to Howard Zinn's work, and shout out to Randy, I think he might have passed away in recent years. With Randy's work, it's also hard, similar to reading Zinn stuff, because we could have done better. And again, this is filled with the ghosts and the memories of people who could perhaps have lived. And we made decisions as a whole, as a country, maybe even as a world power, if you want to use that term, that changed the course of many lives, including my own. And so it's kind of deep to kind of see that impact of people that I love and care about and see them in pain because of decisions that were made well before many of us were born or even had the power to influence the world. That's why you got to speak up, use your voice. Between this and the people's history in the United States, again, gets me emotional because powerful stuff. Fantastic book, by the way. None of these books are garbage. None of these are garbage writers. Like, I'm not going to recommend a book and the writing is just okay. No, these are like powerhouse writers. Eric Schlosser does not play. Howard Zinn, rest in peace, does not play. And Randy does not play with this book. They're not coming to play with y'all. Fantastic book. Be sure and check it out. So with y'all, like, y'all that are watching, y'all that are connecting, what book has made you angry / motivated? Like, what put the fire underneath your behind to say, like, okay, I have to make these impacts. You know what I'm trying to say? I have to make an impact in a certain way. I have to move things in a certain way. What I'm doing isn't enough. I need to take it to the next level. If you wanted more insight as far as more good books to read after you get through the 40 below, no pun intended, the best books of 2023 so far. I did this back in May of this year. I want to say April or May. Check it out. It is still some of my favorite books that came out this year. There's more great books coming out this year. Be sure and stay tuned to the live. Again, if you're liking the vibe of the show, be sure and subscribe. I come to you every Wednesday and Sunday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. And this month, the month of September 2023, I will be coming to you every day with the live energy. Every work day. You won't see me on the weekends. I do have a life.